Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews. Uh, I'm here with a review in the living room with the Christmas tree because A, I just watched this movie in the living room and I didn't feel like going upstairs to record it, and B, I just kind of figured a change of scenery for a review would be nice. I remember back in the early days of my channel, I would review films, not just in my bedroom, but in different rooms in the house, and it'd be interesting to have a change of scenery. So I figured why not do a change of scenery, and also because I have sick dogs on the couch that I have to keep an eye on, so I don't want to leave them alone for too long. Either way, I'm here to review of the new film. It just got released on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome for their Black Friday sale. I'm talking about the Candy Snatchers. This movie is it's something. I wasn't planning on reviewing this movie. I was interested in seeing it because it's being released. It was released by Vinegar Syndrome. I always expect a good release from Vinegar Syndrome. However, their output in terms of the quality of the films has always been a bit all over the place. They've released some stuff that I would say um, are legitimately interesting movies, but I would never. I can't think of a movie that they've released that I could honestly sit here and say is like a legitimately good movie all around in most aspects. Um, that is until this release right here. Uh, I've never heard of this movie before. I grabbed it because it was the Black Friday release, and I was just like, you know what? This sounds interesting. I did a quick Google to find out what this movie was, and I was like, huh, this is some kind of 70s exploitation thriller. This could be an interesting watch. This could be, legitimately a pretty interesting movie. Or it could be one of those famous older exploitation films that you see the trailers for and you read about and you think it's going to be one thing, but it turns out to be not that at all. Some of the best examples of that could be movies like I Dismember Mama, or as much as I love this movie, The Corpse Grinders, pretty much any Ted V. Michaels film. As much as I love Ted V. Michaels, his movies are not as wild as their titles and plots might, and any kind of plot synopsis, the plot summary might suggest. So, I was interested in seeing this because I'm always interested in seeing what these older movies, these older exploitation films, how they hold up, and if they can stay legitimately disturbing. Because there are plenty of movies that do hold up as shocking and disturbing and violent and visceral. Some great examples being Also Shield of the SS. I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left. Uh, I Drink Your Blood. Some movies don't age as well as others, and as a result, some movies aren't as shocking as they used to be. The Candy Snatchers falls into the latter category because it very much holds up as a pretty disturbing film. This movie has to do with a young schoolgirl named Candy who is kidnapped by a trio of criminals um, and held captive for ransom from her father, who runs a jewelry store. And things get bad. Let's put it that way. Uh, a lot of movies that have this kind of plot, this kind of setup, there's movies like this with not necessarily the kidnapping and kind of ransom thing, but with the fuck. But there are plenty of movies like this that have to do with just kidnapping and torturing young women that often just use that as a main piece of like the biggest part of the film, the main focus, I guess, of the film, rather than actually writing an interesting plot. I think Last of Us on the Left does a good job of having an interesting, relatively well-written script, while also being focusing a lot on the horrible aspects of the nature of its film, of the nature of it as a film, I guess. Uh, but there are plenty of movies. I Spit on Your Grave, for example, isn't the most well-written movie ever made. Uh, Kidnapped Coed is another one. As much as I think that movie's pretty interesting, that one is not um, that well written at all. More often than not, movies with this kind of exploitive, young woman in danger plot often don't have a well written script. The Candy Snatchers has a well written script. It's genuinely gripping and thrilling. The music in the film is very good. It's a very well made movie, despite being pretty low budget, obviously. The characters are interesting, all of them, even the, kidnappers who, uh, aren't the best people, but you kind of find yourself interested in them as characters nonetheless. You really want Candy to get out of the situation because she's legitimately just some girl who got caught up in some crazy shit. And her father is a very interesting character for reasons I can't necessarily say because that would be a spoiler. Either way, this movie is kind of clever because with these kinds of movies, you get a few different kinds of endings. You get a relatively happy ending where justice prevails and the bad guys lose and they're captured or killed. You get an ending where the bad guys win and, they get what they want and the innocent people who were harmed during the film are essentially, either left in serious condition or murdered. Um, those are the two kinds of endings you often see with this kind of film. Um, and this movie is comparable, actually, to the Frederick R. Friedel film from the 70s, Axe. I would actually compare this film heavily to Axe, because very similar to Axe, this is a movie that I didn't really know about until randomly coming across it. And giving it a watch, just out of nowhere, I find that it's actually a really just creepy, uncomfortable, cruel, merciless crime thriller. I can't find enough words to describe the Candy Snatchers to you because I'm legitimately surprised by it. It's not like I went into this film expecting it to be bad, but I didn't expect the disturbing aspects of it to hold up as disturbing when seen from a modern eye. I definitely think that, for a 70s exploitation film of this caliber with this kind of plot, it's very mature and restrained. It focuses a lot on the psychological aspects of being kidnapped versus, the more physical aspects of it, being tied up and tortured. Uh, because when something like this happens in Last of Us on the Left, for example, these girls are brought out into the woods, they're cut, they're stripped naked, they're raped. But in this film, it's more about the psychological torture of being kidnapped and buried alive and, you know, struggling in the back of a van as you're blindfolded and, told that the blindfold is the only thing keeping you from being killed right then and there. It's a very restrained film. Like I would never like it's an exploitive film, but I would never say that this film is necessarily like a gore fest or very bloody or violent. At least not until, it gets towards the end. And even then, it's one of those cases comparable to, like, Axe, for example. It's one of those cases where the violence in the film is often, restrained or off screen or just not present at all. And then when it suddenly shows up, it's even more unflinching and impactful, even if, when seen out of context or, for the second time around, it could be seen as less flinching or less unflinching or less violent or less horrible or impactful, you know. Like, the best example I can give is from a movie that I don't even really like, but from a Hirsch Lewis film called Moonshine Mountain, which is a really bad exploitation comedy. But that movie it's just like it's a normal movie. It's more normal than the Candy Snatchers, mind you. And suddenly it gets violent, and that violence hits so hard because you kind of aren't expecting it after a while. The acting in the film is very good. I honestly don't think anybody gave a bad performance at all. Um, especially from the girl who played the kidnapped, the woman the girl who was kidnapped, Candy. The actress for her, she was put through some shit. It's very obvious. Like, she does a very good job, and I the opening to the film is really fucking intense with the kidnapping scene. Like, as soon as it happened, I kind of had to pause the movie and think for a minute because I wasn't expecting it to just open this dark this quickly, but it did. I really don't know what to say about the Candy Snatchers as a film. It's legitimately one of the most surprising movies from I've ever seen from Vinegar Syndrome. Again, their releases are always quality, but they tend to release more schlocky stuff. Like, hell, one of the other Black Friday releases was Tammy and the T-Rex, which was a goofy science fiction splatter comedy, which was dumb as hell but very enjoyable. Um, and alongside that, in Spookies, which is kind of a goofy, like weird, broken monster movie, you have this, which is something that I would expect to see more from Severin, because Severin has done releases of 70s exploitation films that are legitimately disturbing. Stuff like Axe, for example, or the Gestapo's Last Orgy. Uh, shit. The Sinful Dwarf. I kind of expected this kind of stuff more from Severin than from Vinegar, but Vinegar Syndrome has knocked it out of the park, releasing what I can honestly say might be one of the greatest um, 70s exploitation pictures ever made, in my opinion. And also, one of the few 70s exploitation films that holds up very well when rewatched, or I guess, holds up compared to by modern standards. Because a movie like this, I don't think could really be made today. At least, you know, this uncomfortable. If they were to make a remake of this movie and try to make it like a studio film, I don't think they could do it. Not because this movie is like this super disturbing, exploitive, violent, uncomfortable film. It is pretty uncomfortable and disturbing, mind you, but because it's just like the way that the characters are written and everything is just something that I don't think a studio would be willing to put out. Um, I don't even know where I'm going with this review anymore. I don't even know if this is a fucking review, honestly, because I've just been kind of just openly talking about this fucking movie uh, on loop, and I just dropped my Blu-ray. It doesn't matter either way. The Candy Snatchers is a really great 70s exploitation film. If you've never seen it or never heard of it, I highly recommend you seek it out and give it a watch. Um, I'm pretty sure this was like the Black Friday exclusive release, so this is not going to be available from Vinegar Syndrome anymore, which sucks. At least as far as I know, I think that might be the case. Because this is a really great release. However, I'm sure you can probably find this film online. I know there was a previous DVD release from like 2005. Either way, The Candy Snatchers is a pretty damn great piece of 70s exploitation filmmaking, and I highly recommend it, especially if you think, um, especially if you're somebody who thinks that, like Last House on the Left and I Spit on Your Grave are exploitation pictures that may take it a bit too far in terms of being unflinchingly violent and disturbing. Because this film is definitely a lot more mature and restrained feeling. Um, Either way, I'm gonna give this movie like a fucking 8 or 9 out of 10. This movie is really great. Honestly, it's not perfect, but goddamn, did I really not have a good time watching it, but I was genuinely enthralled by it, I should say. Um, anyway, guys, that's it for this one. This is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.